military is, well, the military is
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's event. My name is Doug Rogers. I teach in the anthropology department, and I'm the faculty director of the program in Russian, East European, and
in Russia, and not only in Russia. I think for me it's important that I say that, and I hope I'm not going to speak long because I was told that we would have a conversation afterwards, and I think that might be the most interesting part of it because you have questions or views that you might want to share with me, and I can't guess them in advance. But there are certain things I'd like to say before we have that conversation. I'd like to say, first of all, that we are at an extremely dangerous moment today. Never have the relations between Russia and the United States, or the Soviet Union, that's what it was before, been at this level. During the worst times of the Cold War, when I was living in the Soviet Union, and I remember all that very, very well. Russians were anti-White House, anti-Wall Street, but not anti-American in their vast majority. In fact, there was a kind of a warm feeling vis-a-vis Americans. Today, that's different. Today, it's anti-American at the grassroots level, and there's a reason for it. Another thing that is, to me, scary is that neither side seems to be afraid of nuclear weapons. 30 years ago, those of you who are of my age certainly remember an American movie called The Day After, which is about what happens to you and to your country after a nuclear strike. There was fear of these weapons, as there was in the Soviet Union. There was a realization that these weapons can, and if used will, destroy our country. Today, there's a feeling when you talk to people, it's as if there are no nuclear weapons. It really doesn't seem to play a role in how we act. And the danger of not a deliberate nuclear exchange, but an accidental one, has grown because the level of mistrust between the two countries has grown as well. There have been several times in the past when computers warned of a nuclear attack, but it never got to the real thing because people took the time to really check it out. Now, they didn't have a long time. If an ICBM is launched from Russia, it'll take about 10 minutes for it to hit the US. So you don't have and vice versa, obviously. So you don't have a long time, but you do have some. But my feeling is that if today those same computers malfunction and sit on either side, that an attack has been launched, the response would be immediate. Because the feeling is that this is what's going to happen. Not that long ago, we were all very optimistic, weren't we? Gorbachev, Gorby, Russians, we're going to be friends, we're going to be... And in such a really short period of time, how did this happen? Why are we at the point that we are today? And I'm not saying who's to blame, because that's not a productive way of looking at things. But we should try to understand exactly what did happen. The Soviet Union, once Gorbachev took over, didn't really last very long. He came to power in March of 1985, and by December 1991, there was no more Soviet Union. Some people say it collapsed. It didn't collapse. In a place called the Belaruskaya Pushcha, which is kind of a forest, 3 presidents, the president of Ukraine, the president of Belarus, and the president of Russia proper, Mr. Yeltsin, decided to part company. Decided to disband the Soviet Union. Now, each had his own reasons, definitely. But if we look at Mr. Yeltsin, his reason was very clear. He was the president of Russia, so he was number two to Gorbachev, because Gorbachev was president of the Soviet Union, of which Russia was part, the largest part, but only part. Get rid of the Soviet Union, and there's no president, and you get rid of Gorbachev. And that's precisely what he did. So no more Soviet Union, quickly no more Warsaw Pact, of course. That is to say, countries that were usually called Soviet satellites, part of a military alliance with the Soviet Union. That alliance disappeared. And so the United States had to figure out, how do we deal with this new entity called Russia? How do we deal with it? There's no more Soviet Union. What is going to be U.S. policy vis-a-vis this country? And of course, Yeltsin also had to think about what is going to be Russia's attitude towards the United States. You may remember that soon after the Soviet Union ceased to exist, in I think it was February of 1992, Yeltsin came to the United States and he addressed a joint session of Congress. And he said, the people of Russia are offering their hand to the people of the United States in friendship to build a better world, a world without war, a world without peace. And this was exactly what the vast majority of Russians wanted. And I would even say that today, the vast majority of Russians would like to have, if not a friendship with the United States, at least a partnership. There's no doubt to my mind that that's the case. So that was what Yeltsin wanted. And what kind of response did he get? What kind of response did Russia get? Well, the United States could have picked two ways of treating Russia. One was to say, let's treat Russia like we did our enemies after World War II. Germany, Italy, and some of the countries that were occupied, such as France, or were not occupied, such as UK, but were really badly hurt. Let's find a way to see to it that in those countries, Nazis, fascists do not come back, and communists do not come to power. And may I remind you that in those days, the Communist Party of France and the Communist Party of Italy were very, very powerful. And that plan turned out, was called later the Marshall Plan, which was basically a financial idea to spend a lot of money, but in a very precise way, to develop certain things and not to allow others to develop. Now, that could be the policy to adopt vis-a-vis Russia. See to it that democracy begins to develop in that country. And let me say, just for the record, Russia never, in its entire 1,000 years, never had democracy. Completely absent. So it wasn't like something that once upon a time Russians had and then they lost, but they knew what it was. They didn't know what it was. So let's spend money on getting democracy moving in Russia and seeing to it that the communists do not get back. And that could have been one approach. The other approach was to say, for 40 years, you held a nuclear bomb over our heads. You lost the Cold War, and you're going to pay for it. You're going to be punished for what you did. And there were people who supported one view and people who supported the other in this country. Early in 1992, a document was produced in the United States by a gentleman called Paul Wolfowitz. You may know who he was. He was Undersecretary of Defense of the United States, responsible for policy. The document he produced came to be called the Wolfowitz Doctrine. Not officially, but that's the way it was addressed. It later was incorporated in something that is officially called the Bush Doctrine. That document was leaked to the New York Times, and so it became public. And what it basically said, and you can look it up, it's available, just go to Wolfowitz Doctrine and find it. What it basically said was this: the United States should never again allow any other country to challenge it. The United States must remain the superior country. And we should tell our allies not to worry about developing their own weapons, because we will do that for them. And we must watch out for Russia, because we don't know which way it's going to go. The bear might get up on his hind legs again and growl. When that document was leaked to the New York Times, there was an outcry by the more liberal, if you will. In America now, the word liberal and conservative has lost the meaning that it once upon a time had. So when I say liberal, I'm not sure that I'm saying the right word, but at least many people were upset by this document. Edward Kennedy said that it was an imperialist document that no country could or should accept. It was quickly, as it were, removed and rewritten by Mr. Cheney, not a very liberal man in any sense as far as I can remember, and the Secretary of Defense in those days, Mr. Powell. But basically it retained that view. Russia and America must be the only superpower. And basically, that view was the one that was accepted. It was the one that was accepted. And the attitude towards Russia was pretty much, you're no longer a superpower. You are a second-rate country. Just keep quiet, please. This became evident, and would be evident to you if you follow the policy